Welcome to Conversations with Buddy. I'm your host, Buddy Puckett, brought to you by the YMCA. And the reason why it is the YMCA today is because my guest, he works at the Y. So we're going to unpack that a little bit and figure out what the Y stands for. You might notice if you're watching this on YouTube, I've got this little patch on my nose next to my right eye. This week, I got to go in for a little removal of what's called basal cell skin cancer. It's non-threatening. It looked like I got in a fight with Rocky, like in round, like the one with Mr. T. At least that's what a friend of mine said. So thanks, Nick. Anyway, it is what it is, and I'll get the stitches out this next week, and we'll be good to go. This morning, though, I'm really excited to introduce my friend. We met about 10 years ago. He was a young man coming out of high school, trying to figure out his way. And at the right time, he was referred to me by another friend. And we began a relationship of mentor and mentee. And I'd say today we're really friends. I think the mentor being mentored always exists. So he mentors me and I mentor him. We'll call it that. But I just want to introduce my longtime friend, Angel Marin. Welcome, Angel.
Hello.
So, Angel, how do you pronounce your name really? Because I probably butchered that.
Well, I guess if you were to pronounce it in Spanish, it'd be Angel Marin.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
So, what's your ability to speak Spanish? Are you fluent?
I am, but I definitely lost practice just because a lot of my work doesn't require me to speak that much Spanish unless I'm speaking to some of the students that only speak Spanish.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. Is that kind of right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, let me do this. Let me introduce you. I made you give me a few pointers about you. I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll dive into kind of who you are, how you and I met, where'd you grow up, stuff like that. Sound good?
Okay.
Well, we'll have fun. Well, so first of all, you grew up in Salem, Oregon, and went to 7 different schools. That must have been pretty exciting.
Yeah. I got to know a lot of different people. So
Yeah, okay. You grew up with a single mother and 3 sisters. What's your sisters' names from the oldest to the youngest?
From the oldest to youngest, it's Yuriko, Sylvia, and Alicia.
Okay, where do you fit in? You fit in between the youngest and the middle?
I'm the second to youngest. So right after Sylvia, it would be me and then Alicia.
Nice. You work for the Elevate program, or you are the Elevate program coordinator at the YMCA, and that's really why I want to understand kind of where you've been and then how'd you get to where you're at today. You volunteer leading with Young Life for 2 years. You're not currently doing that anymore, but it's pretty cool. You currently volunteer at People's Church with young adults. And by the way, how old are you right now? Are you 28?
I'm turning 28 in November.
28, November 17th or 18th?
November 8th. Yeah.
November 8th. Okay, I was pretty close. Yeah. I try to remember those things. Question for you. Are you in a Bible study right now?
I'm currently kind of on and off in a lot of Bible studies.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So one thing that's really cool about the city of Salem is there's always something going on that you're just not aware of. Because I know here at the rec, you guys do a Bible study, right? Every Wednesday morning.
Every Wednesday.
There's a friend of mine who hosts a Bible study every Monday. And then I know Jeremiah's doing a Bible study every Thursday. And so I kind of just am able to hop in when I can and I get the opportunity because also other things come up and it gets pretty busy.
Well, you have a regular day job. You know, some of the people you're talking about, they live on commission, so they're in cells, and therefore they can kind of be flexible with their job. But for you, you kind of gotta show up for work.
Yeah.
So, well, let's kind of unpack. Is there anything else you want to talk about when you and I met? How did you and I meet? I guess unpack that a little bit. What do you remember?
I was going to a program called Eli Program, which at the time stood for Empowerment for Latino Youth. And it's funny, the guy's name who introduced me to you was actually Mr. Marin.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine too.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. He was telling me about this opportunity for mentorship, and I remember him telling me, I was 16 at the time, and I was kind of nervous because I'd never done any kind of mentorship or worked in some kind of internship or anything like that. And he was telling me, hey, I heard you're interested in real estate. I know this guy. His name is Buddy. He's a great guy, and maybe you can go meet him and see what you can learn from him. But what's funny is that he told me he wants you to take the initiative and call him first. And I remember that made me so nervous. But for some reason, that was also something that I felt like, oh, I should probably call this guy. Like, the fact that he's wanting me to take the initiative, it just felt like one of those moments where I was like, I should really make a certain move of responsibility that it like warranted a response. So I called you and you immediately picked up, and then you were like, hey, let's meet. I think we were meeting every Thursday or something like that. And it was in your office in South Salem. It was pretty far away because I was living all the way in Northeast Salem. And I was just like, okay, I'll make it happen. And I would take the bus all the time to go meet with you. And it was a pretty cool experience just being able to read. I think we started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then you gave me The Energy Bus. And I remember I hated reading, but for some reason there, I just felt like everything was very purposeful. And so I loved it, and I started reading more of these things and figuring it all out.
That's funny. Cool. Yeah. It's funny when we started meeting, I didn't remember the books we read. I just kind of came up with my own curriculum, like, okay, I'm going to meet with Angel for 12 weeks. We're going to get to know each other first. We're going to talk about, you know, what's your goals? Because I think you hadn't even graduated yet, right? You were like wanting to leave high school, right?
I think
or
I
were you
had
working
already.
On your GED?
Yeah, I was working on my GED, and
Okay.
I think I was already on like track to get it pretty soon.
Okay.
I took all the tests and passed them.
Right.
I just didn't have it yet because I had to wait a little while for the diploma.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, you know, when we talk real estate and people want to make money, and it's exciting. It's a great place to begin just a friendship, you know. Hey, Angel, how are you going to make money? You're a man, right? You're 18. What are you going to do?
I think at the time I was 16 or 17.
Okay. I think you're probably 17 because I remember you. I don't know, for some reason, I remember what sticks in my mind is I knew you when you were 18, but it probably was right before. It was that summer, and then you turned 18 in that November. So I don't know. I mean, you could have been 16, but I think you're a little bit older than that. But because I needed you ready to move forward, because that's where I really work well with men. I mean, I could work well with high schoolers and stuff, but I think is, okay, Angel, you're 18, you're a man. What do you want to do with your life?
Right.
And was that scary for you?
Yes and no, because a part of me knew that I had to take action. And my mom also raised me in a way where I had 3 sisters and a single mom, and she's like, you're a man, and kind of like making me own that role of like being the man of the house and things like that.
What a great mom, man.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, life isn't perfect, right? Would you say your life's been perfect?
No.
Yeah, my life's not been perfect either. But a mom who loves you enough to say, you're going to work. You're going to figure this out, Angel. You're a man.
Yeah.
You're the man of the house, kind of.
That's actually why I ended up getting my GED. I was not wanting to go to school. Well, when it's funny, now that I look back, I kind of see things like hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah. And
moving around so many times and like losing friends and having to make friends again and all this stuff, it really starts to weigh on you.
Yeah.
And I remember I just didn't want to go to school because I went to Stevens before. I ended up going to North. Then I'm going back to McKay. I see all my old friends, but they're not talking to me. And things are just kind of not going how I expected them.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be in school. And so I remember I would skip school all the time. And then my mom one day, she walks in and she's like, if you skip school again, I'm just going to make you go get your GED and start working. And I was like, why? And then she's like, I'd rather you just be working than be here. Like, honestly, like she just told me, like, just be here as like a lazy bum.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And so I remember I thought I would like be sneaky. She went to work and I skipped again. And then she comes back for some reason. And then she's like, you skipped again? And she's like, let's get in the car. Let's go. And I'm thinking she's going to take me back to McKay. She takes me to Chemeketa to get signed up for the GED program. And I'm someone that hates confrontation, like in public. And so my mom gets out of the car and she's like, let's go. She's like, let's go. You're getting signed up. And all that awkwardness just made me go and get my GED. And I actually appreciate it looking back now, because I was just kind of wasting a lot of time, and being able to work early taught me a lot of things, especially at that time that I'm meeting with you and meeting with Sven and just working hard, but also learning how to like work onto the Lord. And yeah, it was really cool. I remember a lesson that you taught me at that time was you were speaking about the story of Moses and how they were wandering. And I remember you explaining how like you're supposed to have a vision, because if you don't have a vision, you just like wander. And so learning to be focused and have a vision and all that kind of stuff and set goals, those were the kind of things that were starting to help me grow during that time.
It's funny, as a mentor, sometimes I don't know if I'm impacting anybody. Like, is anybody listening? You know, because you're young, maybe, and it's not you. I'm just talking in general. And it's always fun to hear what we do, what we reap, what we sow, and as we speak life and truth into people, it has an impact. You know, God's word goes out and it never comes back void. And so, I mean, this has been 10 years in the making. We're here now. You're a completely different guy. I mean, it's really encouraging, man, quite honestly. Oh, by the way, there's a movie called The Forge that's out right now. It's interesting. It probably parallels your life a lot. I'd be curious. I was weeping watching it. It made me cry.
Oh, really?
Because, single mom, son, who the dad went off and whatever, I don't know the situation there, but he was playing video games, and finally his mom is meeting with a couple other ladies, and they began to pray, and a mentor showed up in this young man's life, and the power of a mentor. So that's pretty cool. I want to go back now. I want to take it from the very beginning. You said you grew up in Salem. Did you ever go back to Mexico, though? Was there a time? It seems like you went back to Mexico at some point in time. So start from the very beginning and kind of give us the background, if you don't mind.
Okay. Mexico was an interesting time. So I accredit a lot of my faith to this time. So when I was growing up, I was living in Canby, Oregon, and sorry, I hate like getting emotional and stuff in public, but I was growing up in Canby, Oregon, and I was living in this basement of some house with my family. We rented a small apartment that was just like in the basement of this house. And I had, at the time, it was my dad and my 3 sisters and my mom. And my dad was just slowly just becoming just a bad guy, He started getting really abusive and did a whole bunch of stuff that was like not okay. And after a while, we finally went to the authorities, and so he was taken away for the things that he was doing. And so he actually ended up going to prison for 14 years. But he was also always constantly threatening and saying that he would just murder us pretty much if he was ever to get caught or something. And so he told my family that he would kill us or something. He was always just saying threats, And so my mom, she got scared and wanted to be able to send us somewhere else before he gets out. So she was hoping, and I think this was her plan, I'm only assuming because it's hard to have these conversations sometimes with family. So she was hoping that she would be able to save money and buy a house or something far away, and we would be okay. But in the meantime, she was working like 3 jobs, and you have 4 kids. And so she was like asking her sisters in Mexico if they would be willing to watch us for a little while. And so she sent us there. The way she went about it probably wasn't the best because she told me that she was only going to send me there for like a week to go visit my aunt. And so, you go to this far off country and don't know anyone. And then at first it was actually kind of fun because you're like, oh, I didn't know I had this much family. And so it was fun. But then after a while, I just remember time passing by and just wanting to come back. And so it was a tough time because I felt really alone. We all got split up. My oldest sister went to live with her actual dad, so she has a different dad than I do. And then my middle sister went to live with another aunt. And then me and my younger sister were living with another aunt. And it was just a tough time also because I'm used to like my mom being like an affectionate mother that like hugs and kisses you and stuff. And so when I was young, it was like you just went through a bunch of trauma. We were told not to really speak about it just because we don't want our family pictured in a certain
How old were you at this age?
I was 7.
Okay.
And then so we didn't really share much. We living there, and what's so awesome though, right before I left, my mom, I remember, I don't know how old I was, but I remember asking my mom, like I still remember to this day when I asked her, like, who's God? Because I see her walking around and she would be like angry and she would be like, ah, Dios mío, And so Dios mío is like, oh my God.
Uh-huh.
And so I remember asking her, like, who's God? And she just gave me this huge, like, declaration. Like she thought for a moment, she was like, God's like the King of Kings. Like he's ever present, he's always watching you, and he's a good God. She just told me all these great things about him. I was immediately like sold.
Done.
I remember praying with my mom a lot. And so I carried that practice into Mexico. And so during that time when it was really lonely and stuff, I also felt really encouraged and like comforted by God. And I actually remember my dad did, before he went to prison, I don't know how this happened. I don't know if there was just like still a trial going on or what exactly was going on. But before he went to prison, he picked me and my little sister up from the babysitter and took us to our apartment. And he sat us down, and I remember him asking me, he's like, hey, Angel, I'm going to go to prison, but there's a way that I won't be going to prison. And he was like, I would just need you to testify and tell them that what they're saying about me is a lie. And so anyways, I remember sitting there and just thinking like, God, give me the strength. Because at this time, this guy would just find pleasure in harming you for no reason. And so at this point, I'm like, I already heard some of the threats. And I'm sitting in front of him and just thinking to myself, like, I'm probably going to get beat pretty bad. But for some reason, I found a lot of courage to I looked at him in his eyes and I was like, no, I'm not going to lie. And so it was one of those like defining moments of my life because it's just, I really, I don't know. I resonate a lot with David when he just, when he talks about Goliath and like saying how, the God who rescued me out of the paw of the bear and the lion, he'll rescue me from this Philistine. And just that I feel like I was able to face kind of like a bear that day, you know, like I'm facing this evil dude who was getting ready to hurt me. But I remember praying for God for strength. And then I told him the truth. I was like, yeah, I saw what you did. And I'm not going to lie. And so immediately I expected all this bad stuff to happen. He actually just crumbled. I saw him just like fall on his knees and start crying.
Really? And
so that moment really changed me because that was like a first trial of me like attempting my faith. Like I'm going to put all my faith in God and he's going to take care of me. And I'm sitting there with my little sister and I'm really protective of my siblings. So a part of me was even like, if he does something, what am I going to do? But just the fact that I saw him crumble, start crying, and then it was like God showed me what this man truly is. He was really just a coward. And cowards like to, you know, hurt kids when no one's watching. Cowards like to do all this evil stuff. They think they're the strongest, but it's like you're faced with the man of faith. You watch him crumble, and it was just a pretty awesome thing. After that, in Mexico, it was just like even building on more of that faith. But the thing is, I never understood the Trinity. So even when I was living in Mexico, I would go to church and stuff, and I would just be like, okay, I know there's a God, but who's this Jesus guy? You know, like I don't understand this. And so it was such a blessing to go from all this stuff and kind of, I didn't grow up in the church. I would go on and off with my aunts or with my mom. And then I meet you and I meet Sven. And it was just like God was preparing me for more understanding. And so it was pretty awesome. I remember you actually asking me, hey, Angel, do you believe in God? When I was being mentored. You're like, I'm a man of faith. And then you just stop. You're like, by the way, do you believe in God? And it was such a funny thing because in that moment, I was just like, yes. And I've been I was like hungry for someone to talk to me more about it, you know? But it's just you hang around your friends, family, and stuff like that. You only get so much understanding. And then so being able to talk about it with you and with Sven and going to Bible studies with Sven and learning more and more and more, it was just like solidifying my faith completely.
Yeah. So how long were you in Mexico? You went there at 7 and you thought you were going to go there for a week and then
I was there for a year and a couple months.
So you hadn't seen your mom for a year and a couple months, or did she ever come down and visit?
I think she came and visited once, and it was during Christmas. But I'll be honest, it was kind of awkward because my memory of her started to fade after a while. And I remember there was times where I even like prayed to like remember what she looks like, just because when you're 7, it's just like 1 year feels like 10 years.
Oh yeah.
And so you're sitting there and I'm like, what does she look like again? And I would like try to picture her in my head. And I remember when I first saw her again, we were getting out of an airplane in the airport. When I finally saw her when I was here in Salem, and she gets down, you know, to like hug us. And a part of me felt a little bit like awkward, like this stranger is wanting to hug me, but I knew it was my mom. So, I immediately just kind of like, I was thinking about it, and then I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to embrace this moment. And I went and hugged her, and it was pretty cool. And And my mom's just such an amazing person.
Yeah.
She has her flaws just like anyone else.
Really?
But,
I mean, that's weird that she has flaws. I mean,
yeah, I know, right?
yeah, we're all human,
Yeah,
man.
but
her love
Mhm.
is much more overpowering than any flaw that any parent has.
And she has a story herself. I mean, her mother died when she was, I think, 21.
Mm-hmm.
And but she was already dying from diabetes way before that. So at 15, she already remembers like taking care of her mom and then having a daughter with this guy who she's married to. This guy starts cheating on her around the same time that her mom's passing away and all this kind of stuff. And so my mom's a strong woman. Like her faith journey inspires me a lot.
Yeah.
She tells me stories about how her mom was in another city in the hospital, and she would just have enough money to buy a bus stop or a bus ticket to get to her mom. And she was just like, God, I'm going to trust you with my life, and I'm just going to go see my mom. And that's that. Like, she didn't really think about how she would return or anything.
This is heavy, Angel. I mean, I know a little bit about your story, but really, maybe I don't know the full story. But I was going to say, when you're 7 and God's giving you this courage, you know, the faith of a child. That's what Jesus said. You know, have the faith of a child. You know, you're kind of an all in. Then we get older. We get, you know, we have lots of limiting beliefs and
First world problems.
Amen.
Yeah. There's times where I literally picture a little kid version of me just going like, dude, get your stuff together. Like the faith that I had when I was younger compared to the faith that I have now. I feel like I'm catching up to that person at 7 years old because I, for some reason, made it a discipline to pray every night. I made it a discipline to just be in communication with God constantly, where it got to a point where I just felt like I was being a father to myself.
It's funny, most of us would say, hey, buddy, what would your 56-year-old self say to your 20-year-old self? Because my 20-year-old self wasn't very mature. But what you're saying is, hey, Angel, what would your 7-year-old self say to your almost 28-year-old self? Like, get your stuff together.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me that your faith was so profound. You may not fully understood it, but you were all in. So, all right. So then you come back from Mexico to Salem. Do you ever go back to Mexico later on in life, or have you never been back?
I went once more when one of my sisters got married down there, and we went to go to her wedding. Oh,
okay. Just so like a weekend, go down for the weekend or the week and hit the wedding and come back. Gotcha. Okay, so then you go to 7 different schools. You're kind of done with school. You're getting your GED. That's about the time you and I met. 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. And then let's pick up from there to where you're at today. I introduced you to Sven Anderson. Do you remember how that? Because it's funny. A lot of that's a blur to me. I don't recall exactly, and maybe you recall it better than I do.
I think it might have been around the time that you guys were wanting to set up a group of young men to discuss what you guys were going to do in order to bring young men into Valor mentoring at that time. And so Sven was there. We went to Roundtable Pizza, and then it was just me, Jeremiah, Anthony Dixon, and I can't remember. I think that was it, right? The young guys. And then it was Tim Davis, Sven, you, and we were just discussing, like, how can we get more young men to come to Valor Mentoring? And
it's funny, as you bring that up, I couldn't remember how I introduced you to Sven. Now I remember.
Yeah.
And then from there, where did it go?
Sven invited me to church.
Imagine that.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, Angel, do you go to church around here?" And I was like, "No." And then he's just like, "Do you want to come with us to church with me and my family?" And I was like, "Sure." And it's just so funny because I think I told you this. I didn't really hang out with everywhere I was growing up in. I lived in apartment complexes with a lot of Hispanic people.
Yeah.
I lived in neighborhoods. Like in the Northeast Salem area by Northgate or something, and it was a lot of Hispanic people, and so now I'm like 17 and I'm hanging out with Buddy and Sven and
a couple whiteys. Yeah.
And my sister was like, "Who are you going to meet?
What is going on here?
Who are these guys?"
Well, and I'll tell a little bit of the story, but Sven and Elena invite you to live with them for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then I remember you were living with them, but you and I were going to grab dinner one night because we still like to hang out. And so I think I come and pick you up at Sven's house. We go grab dinner. And then we come back home. I'm dropping you off. I talk about this a lot, so you know exactly where I'm going with this. But this is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. As I tell the camera, Angel is talking to me. He goes, "Buddy, before I met you, I thought white people hated Mexicans." I think those are the exact words you use. I'm like, "Oh, man. That's so, it's interesting." I'm like,
I'm so embarrassed.
It couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
But hey, that's okay. That's the environment you grew up in. You know, show me your 5 friends or show me the environment you live in and you'll be just like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't have known. And to realize, no, you're loved by everyone.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I think part of that was just like perception or whatever, because the one like couple white families that were in our neighborhood were just like the mean old lady that you throw the ball over the yard and they're like, "I'm not going to give you their ball back."
Yeah.
You know, something
and she might
like
have been mean to the little white kids too.
Exactly.
But because you're a Mexican,
it,
you think, oh, she just doesn't like Mexicans. Therefore, whites hate Mexicans. Yeah.
And it's just such an ignorant thing to think. That's so embarrassing.
What would you say about that very comment today? What's the answer? What's the truth? I want not the answer, but the truth.
It's so funny. So to go from the kind of father figure that I had, and the thing is, every person that came into my life as a father figure was a bad role model. Like I had my mom's ex-husband would just kind of peer pressure me into becoming a man. And this is something that a lot of people believe, like this like macho kind of thing, is being a man is like being a tough guy, messing around with girls, not really caring, like just being your own man. As long as you're responsible, you can go drink, you can go smoke, you could go do whatever you want. Don't let people tell you what to do. And so going from learning those kinds of things of what it means to be a man. And I remember I hated a lot of those things because I lived with 3 sisters and a single mom. Like, I didn't like that whole macho type thing because it felt to me like being disrespectful. Like they would tell me, my mom's ex-husband, he would tell me things like, just ignore your sisters, come hang out with the guys, and come do this and that. And like kind of just in a way disregard your family, like your sisters and all this stuff. And I'm like, to me, they're the world to me. And so that attitude, it just became really frustrating. And he at one point wanted to like peer pressure me into sleeping with a prostitute. And I remember I was like 14 and he's like, "What are you?" Because I told him, "Hey, I don't want to do this. It just doesn't feel right. I don't want to go or whatever." And I remember him looking at me. He's like, "Are you gay or something? Like, what's wrong with you?" You know? And going from meeting people like that in my world, and then meeting someone like Sven Anderson, who's all about accountability, and about just taking care of your family, like your family's your first ministry, leading by example, being a man of Christ. And you showing me that kind of stuff too, about like just having a vision for your life and also making space and time for your family. Cause you were very like much a family man as far as like the weekends. This day I'm doing this with my wife. This day I'm doing this like with my daughters. And that's that, and those kinds of things were just showing me a new kind of like male role model that I was not used to. And I gravitated to it fully. And there was other guys in the mix too.
Sure.
Josh Garcia, Tim Davis. There's just so many great men of God. And that's something that was so interesting because when I was around 14, 15, I remember the couple stories that I did hear about men in the Bible, about how they like live for God and all this stuff. I remember thinking to myself, I want to be able to live for God and do all these great things. But in my neighborhood, it's like, yeah, my mom's married to this guy who's this way, you know, and then the guys I'm growing up with, they're getting into gangs, and some of them that are not getting into gangs are just partying, and I like that stuff too, and so it's really hard. And I remember thinking to myself, like, God, if I decide that I want to live for you, am I going to do it alone? Like, I don't want to do it alone, because in that time, that's all I knew. And then so him like tearing that veil and being able to see that there's older men who have been living away for Christ for years, it was just so inspiring, and it helped me realize that I could do it too.
Yeah. Well, this last week, you invited me, Tim, and Sven to join your table for the YMCA.
Oh yeah,
that was a really big event, because now this is 10 years in the making. It just proves what influence and mentorship does. I didn't have a mentor either growing up. I mean, I was a one-man show, and I did all that I wanted to do, and none of it was good. I get married, and God, you know, uses my wife to really rally me in. But man, influence is a huge deal. Mentorship does matter. It was really cool to see you hosting a table and bringing in people who had mentored you along the way. Now you're mentoring. Now you're doing what we did, right? So you are a mentor. And how does that feel?
It feels great, honestly. And you never know if like the fruit will grow, but I love that whole analogy of like, you just keep casting the net in good faith. Yeah. You know, because if you keep casting the net, you might not see things on this side of eternity, but maybe later you'll realize that like fruits did grow. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with the kids that I'm mentoring right now. Yeah. So going into this program,
this is called Elevate, right?
Yeah, this is called Elevate. They already had their first cohort. I wasn't there to be a part of that. Now we're starting the second cohort. I did get to meet some of the kids from the first cohort. And so the ones that were being more engaged, I decided to make them student leaders, because I was allowed to carry on some kids from the first cohort into the second one.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah. And that allowed me to kind of get creative and think about kind of how you were saying, like you created your own little course with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I was thinking, I really want them to learn boundaries. So I was thinking boundaries for leaders and atomic habits.
Just so that clear,
they can, get a good understanding of how to build better habits. And I remember reading both books. I like over the weekend, I read both books, and I was in like the 4th chapter of each one, just to kind of compare and contrast. And that Atomic Habits book is it's such a great book, because it really just dives in right away. Like, and I feel like for kids, it's exciting just to hear this story. Like, oh man, he starts off like, when I was so-and-so age, I broke my nose. I'm like, dude, what the heck? And so he's starting off really good, and it's exciting. Yeah. And the kids, so these last 2 weeks, we've been having meetings every Thursday, just the leadership group. Yeah. And discussing this book. And yesterday we had our first discussion for the first introduction and the first chapter. And they're all absorbing it really well. And they're excited to learn more. Yeah. They actually want to be mentored, and so that's really awesome.
Explain the cohort, because I don't really understand. So it's like a 12-week program, like 90 days. What do you mean cohort?
So the way it works is we the this is for a program for adolescents 16 to 19. And so some of them are still in school. So during the school year, I want to do sessions from 4 to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And where they're just learning career development skills. One of the things that they were doing these last 2 weeks was like critical thinking and problem solving, active listening, things like that, just to kind of help you with your career. They're also going to learn how to build a resume. They're also going to get, towards the end of the year, like right around after spring, I want to help them get volunteer opportunities so that they can, now that they have a built resume, they can add volunteer opportunities to that resume. And then we also want to help them get internships by summer so that they can just have more work experience to put into that.
So I was just thinking, I was writing a couple notes. You're a real blessing to people, by the way, Angel. It's funny, when you and I first started mentoring when you were like 17, 18, did you think you'd be here today? Like, could you have imagined that? Was that part of your, did you already know? Because here's the deal, God created, I love that, God created you and I in his image. And we're creative. And you were using the word creative, like you have, I didn't realize I have creative abilities too that really excite me. And you do the same thing. I've just heard you say it. So, but did your 18-year-old self know that you would be doing what you're doing today?
No, not at all. I think there was a lot of challenges because being a high school dropout and all the experience that I had was just agriculture. And I wasn't bad at it. I'm not a person that's like lazy. I just didn't want to. I noticed like my family, everyone, they've all done like landscaping and different agricultural work or just working in the fields. Yeah. Doing other like miscellaneous things. I didn't really want that. I knew that.
And you tried that. I remember you've done a lot of those hard jobs, and it makes you appreciate the job you have now. But yeah.
Oh yeah. And just working those kinds of jobs, it didn't make me feel confident to go and pursue these bigger roles just because I was like, well, I don't have any experience. I tried to go to college for a little while, and at that time, I had gotten my GED. I was 17, and I started going to college, but I was still hanging out with my high school friends because some of them were even older than me. They were in their senior year, and I dropped out in my sophomore year. And so they were still wanting to hang out and take me to parties and stuff, and it was like, oh, homework can wait, and I was procrastinating, and so it was completely my fault. Like, I failed some college classes, so now I'm like, I failed college. I have a GED. I just worked agriculture jobs, and so it was really hard to break into some of these other jobs. But thankfully, actually, through Josh Garcia, I got that experience at Connect Insurance.
That's right.
That was the first job that was more like just, what would you call it, like clerical or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, you're assisting Josh in his sales role. You're calling clients. It's more than clerical. It's definitely a higher level stuff because anybody can do paperwork, but not everybody's called to do paperwork. You're called to have a relationship, Angel. You're a relationship guy, right? And so you finally realize, I can do this. Right. Like, I can be respected. Who cares? You know, I tell a story. Les Schwab, you know, he's a tire guy, right? He died 10 or 15 years ago, but I think the story in Les's book, he may have graduated from the 8th grade and created a multi-billion-dollar company. So, you know what? Those are just limiting beliefs that somebody's told you, but look what you've learned in the last 10 years by just being passionate, allowing God to work in your life, being influenced by men, and working hard. Yeah. You know what? And you're authentic. I mean, I can tell, you're not like, well, I got to go work and I'll try to, like I get to. I get to go to work. So I think when you're passionate about somebody, I hire people with passion, man. I don't really care about your history. Of course, you know, there's got to be some skills in there, but here's the deal. You can train skill, but character is something you've developed from when you're little, how your parents raised you, and you made some hard decisions at 7 to go, you know what? I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell the truth, even if you do beat me. That's a big moment. That's called conviction. So you have conviction, Angel. And I think that's what people are going to sense on this podcast is, we all brokenness. You have your own. It's your story. I got my own. It's different than yours. But this is cool, man. I really appreciate you sharing this. What's the why mean to you? Now that you're here and you're leading, you're mentoring, you're being creative, what does that mean to you?
It honestly feels really empowering because going into this job, it seemed not due to anyone's fault or anything, but the second cohort portion was not really quite figured out all the way. And so just coming in with this attitude, like, okay, I'm going to take ownership and make this my own thing. And my boss being willing to give me full reign. She's, man, my boss and my coworker, they're just such strong, competent women. Like, I feel when I'm sitting in the room with them, sometimes I feel like a little less confident, but they always like protect me and make sure like, hey, are you stressed? What's going on? And like, just make sure that I'm doing okay. Giving me free reign, telling me like, hey, you got this, all this stuff. And
that's pretty sweet.
It's pretty
man.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so this job just feels so liberating because I get to like work with kids, and I already had a passion for this stuff. At People's Church with the young adults, I hosted a taco night at my apartment.
You did,
where
man.
I was just helping young adults build a resume if they didn't have one, because I see a need for stuff like that. There's a lot of young adults that don't have parents that are like really showing them everything that they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily the parents' fault. They just don't know that they're supposed to teach like someone that stuff. And so these people are figuring it out, and being able to help them through that, it's really awesome. And then also hosting that career group thing. Like as soon as I went to the Y and I was like, oh, we can get these rooms for something cool. And I wanted to do that career group, and I had been talking about that like as soon as I got into the Y.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you invited Jeremiah, my daughter Emily. That was awesome. I thought, how cool is that?
Yeah. Well,
it shows confidence, Angel, just conviction and confidence, which is what God's called you to be about. Well, courage, conviction, confidence, if you will.
And I do want to give credit to Dylan, and then Jared Ford is the young adult pastor at People's Church. He has really encouraged me because when he told me, he actually was the first one that was like, hey, what if we were to do a career group? And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And he was like, okay, like if you wanted to, you can like take over that. And
Come on.
It was pretty cool. And then Dylan was like, oh, I would love to be a part of that as well. And so it was really cool to be able to do it the first time this Wednesday. And I'm hoping that it will just stay continuously going.
Dude, that's so awesome. Well, I've gotten to watch your journey for the last 10 years. It's been really awesome to see what God's doing in your life, And remember, you and I, as believers, we get to plant seeds, and sometimes we water. And we don't know if we get to see it this side of eternity or the other side, but because we know God is the one that does the increase. He's the one that does the change. But getting to witness, mentors and discipleship, disciplers coming to Angel and discipling you and loving on you, Sven Anderson, Tim Davis, and Josh, and now what you're doing, you're planting seeds, that same stuff that was planted in your life, you get to do the same thing.
And I do want to say, because you did a good comment about how like we don't see that on this side of eternity, but I will say if you want to see rewards or like fruits of your labor on this side of eternity, plant more seeds.
Come on.
There's just
Plant more seeds.
Sometimes this is a frustrating thing, and it's not. I'm not talking about any church in particular. I'm talking about just churches in general. It seems that we're just waiting for like the current church attendance next generations to grow up and just kind of keep them in the church. And sometimes it feels like not enough outreach is being done. And to me, you got to be willing to go and meet people that you disagree with. You got to be willing to sit in a room with someone that like completely hates God. And even though it might feel uncomfortable, it's just such an amazing thing. I've had 2 people tell me to my face, like, F God. They're like, I don't care for that at all. I don't want my kids to hear about it, anything like that. And those same 2 people one of them told me, hey, Angel, I just want to let you know that I thank God for you. And then the other one time messaged me. He's like, hey, Angel, I would love it if you came to my baptism. Like, and to me, it's the fact that you get to experience that is on this side of eternity. It's just such a wonderful thing.
Well, I'm going to take that, plant more seeds, you know. If you want to see more, plant more seeds.
Yeah.
I remember your baptism. I can't remember exactly when it was. Probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, actually, where you had a profession of faith and you decided that God was calling you to be baptized. What a joy to see people come to know the Lord. And baptism isn't salvation, but it is a public declaration of your faith in Christ. It's like saying, I'm all in, right? And I think, you know, when people, of course we go to people that hate God, and I mean, they don't know. They're ignorant to the truth. You know, their father is unfortunately Satan. And until we proclaim truth, until the Holy Spirit gets hold of their heart, that they'll never know the truth. So it's our job to go plant seeds, love on people, and meet them exactly where they're at. Yeah. Would you agree on that?
I completely agree. And you're not always going to have the right words.
Nope.
Like, that's the thing that it's so funny. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't know, like just waiting for a calling to start working. I think just practice, you know, like to me, waiting for a calling before you start working is like waiting to get married before you start learning how to be a good husband. Like, that's just
I
like,
know. Hello. Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
And so it's like, just start practicing. A lot of these guys, man, one of the guys that told me that he didn't like God, he would really like ask me really challenging questions, and I didn't know the answers all the time. And he's like, you know what? You're actually making me believe in God less. And I would sit there just like completely destroyed. And I'm like, oh, but it was just like, those are the refining moments. And you just keep practicing and practicing.
I've got some good takeaways here, refining moments. You know, I wanted to say this here, and then we'll wrap up here because it's time.
Yeah.
I appreciate where you're at, Angel, because a lot of guys, specifically, I don't mentor women, I only mentor guys, but buddy, I've done these things, X, Y, or Z, and so therefore I don't feel worthy of being a mentor. Well, we've all done X, Y, and Z one way or the other, right? And God didn't call perfection. He called us to go do the work and plant seeds and love on people. Hey, I'm not perfect. Are you? Yet he's called you into a ministry and you're doing it. So that's pretty amazing. Well, brother, any last words of wisdom before we wrap up on this podcast? This has been really good, by the way.
I mean, I can't really think of anything right now.
Yeah. Well,
I always think of like just walk humbly before God. You know, that's like
walk humbly
the only
before
thing that
God.
I always think about is walk humbly before God. Fear is the beginning of wisdom.
You're quoting scripture to me, Angel.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, hey, you know, we unpacked quite a few Bible verses, which is always something I want to do, because it's not my words, it's not your words, it's only the word of God that matters. So, well, hey, we are just gonna sign off here. Really appreciate Angel being on here today. We appreciate you, the listeners. We share these stories hopefully to inspire and impact you. and that you would also have a relationship with Jesus as well. If you ever want to have that relationship, if you don't, we would love to chat with you. If you do, let this be an encouragement to you to just keep moving forward, seeking God, stay humble before Him, and fear the Lord.
Amen.
Angel, thanks for being here. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
I loved you sharing your story, and I'll be praying for you, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate being here.
Yeah. Peace out. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.